All right. Hi, everyone. Hope everyone is doing good today. Um, this is a presentation on how to use alcohol ink um, for STEM or STEAM purposes. And hopefully um, we'll have a good conversation at the end about um, different possibilities and changing things to fit what you need. I do welcome questions while we're going. Um, this is a presentation brought to you by Library Makers, which is a community that connects and supports library maker staff of all levels of experience. Um, we have lots of different opportunities for people. So we have a network on Mighty Networks. You've probably joined that. We um, do a couple of different presentations a month, and we put those up on YouTube when they're done. So this will be recorded, as you heard, and it'll go up on YouTube in the next couple of days. We try to create a welcoming, safe space for library makers to ask questions, find mentors, develop skills, share resources, that kind of thing. And hopefully make a difference in the field. So if you're not already signed up for Library Makers, then you can do that at librarymakers.org. And we would be happy to have you.
I'm going to just, I did remember checking these out this time. I walked out with them and I found a couple of them.
What do you got? I'm curious.
Michael Connolly for my husband, Resurrection Walk.
Oh, okay.
That was a good read.
Yeah.
And David Baldacci has another.
Oh, yeah. Grab a wine. Grab.
All right. So you should get an email at the end of this, in the next day or so, that will have the recording link to the recording on it. And I will switch over to my presentation and introduce myself. My name is Michaela Null. I currently work at Greene County Public Library in Xenia, Ohio, and I've worked in library maker spaces for since 2016, I want to say. I've worked in a couple of different spaces, but I've been here, I think, somewhere between 4 and 5 years. And I'm just a library makerspace specialist. So I'm in there on the ground helping people. A couple of years ago, we did a STEM club, and that's sort of where this particular application started for me. So we did a STEM club for 8 to 12-year-olds. It lasted an hour and a half. It was once a week. It was very informal, focused on exploring things. It wasn't super structured, but it was okay. Let's share ideas. Let's explore the materials, that kind of thing. We did things like an egg drop and all sorts of different things around creating in STEM. And so that's a picture of us. One of our groups that we had, we actually did it twice. And I have a bit of a history with alcohol ink. I was introduced to alcohol ink through the first place that the first makerspace where I worked. And I just thought it was really just a great thing. And so I was interested in using it, and I had done programs on it, developed curriculum on it. And I just was like trying to think of different things we could do for this STEM club. And I was like, what if I could do something with alcohol ink that would, that could have STEM applications or STEAM applications, making the STEM into STEAM essentially. And so I actually came across somebody who had done a curriculum, and I will send this out as a link later. But there was a curriculum on basically surface tension on Education World. So it was about, you know, exploring surface tension and hydrophobia and things like that. And I was like, this is perfect. I can use this and sort of develop it into my own sort of schedule. So what is interesting about alcohol ink is it is an alcohol-based ink. It dries quickly. It spreads out. Obviously, it's alcohol soluble, so you can add alcohol to it. Generally speaking, it's removable from non-porous surfaces, but it has to be really non-porous. But it doesn't stain as much as some projects would. But we can use those qualities to kind of demonstrate and bring a little bit more life to what might otherwise be kids looking at just water on a thing. I think the person who did the Education World program, they actually had it in the water in a dish, and it had a projector on it that was projecting it up so kids could see it. And they were like kind of battling alcohol and water. And but obviously I had kids do it themselves. You do need things. You need supplies. Table covering, gotta have it. Gloves are important. It will get all over your hands. I was doing some stuff this morning and it's already on me. Aprons are really useful. For this project, you will need, I would recommend 2 rolls of paper towels if you have them. Do not use these gloves here at the bottom. They're cheap. They're great for that reason. They're great for some things, but they tear really easily, and they're just not worth it. Just use regular old gloves. I have water and alcohol in these little needle nose bottles, and I kind of separate them by color, so we can know which is which we're using. And the higher the alcohol, kind of the better, the percentage. So I have 91 on here. If you use 70% isopropyl alcohol would be fine, but the more the better. This is what kind of the most alcohol ink bottles look like here on the page. And for the purposes of this project, I use a substrate called Dura-Lar, which I was introduced to. And I was actually just thinking this morning, I use the kind of see-through-ish Dura-Lar, but there is some look like that. It's kind of like vellum. It's kind of, you can see through it a bit. You could use potentially, they have matte versions and opaque versions that you could use. It might actually, I usually put paper underneath so the kids can see it better, the colored paper. But if you had an opaque piece of plastic, it would work just as well too. Over here on the right hand side of the screen, I just have some like optional things. So a spray bottle can be useful to clean off. So actually what I do is as kids go, I have them clean off their surface. And hence why we need a lot of paper towels. There are other tools that you can use for alcohol inks. People use straws to blow it across, or the canned air to blow it across the page. there are these dotting tools, which sometimes are called styluses, but you can find them for all sorts of purposes. There are ones for clay, there are ones for drawing mandalas, but just they're really good to use to add if you're adding inks together. The other thing down at the bottom is a dauber, a felt dauber. So they have little felt pieces that are interchangeable, and you could put the ink on there and apply it, and it will still do some spreading. And then tape can be used to cover portions. If you're doing artwork, can be used to be cover portions of the art and then take the tape off afterwards. There's a lot of like so much stuff you can do with alcohol ink. So let's see really quick. I am going to take if you have any basic questions about the supplies, we can talk about that now if you're interested, or if you want me to keep going and come back to it, that's fine too.
I do have a quick, excuse me, a quick question.
Yeah.
You mentioned the paper is, the Dura-Lar is like vellum. Can you use vellum if you have it? Would that work?
As long as the ink and water, as long as it's not soluble
Okay,
at all, then I think it would be fine. Yeah.
gotcha. Okay,
I have also used, I wouldn't for this purpose necessarily, but like surfaces like mirror board,
yeah,
anything where it's not going to absorb,
okay,
generally
that makes sense.
it's a decent surface. Like you
Okay.
could, you could do it on a glass or ceramic if you really wanted to too.
Okay. Thank you.
Do we have questions about any other of the materials or anything that I talked about? Oh, we have something in the chat. Oh, that was you. All right, so I'll keep on trucking, and let me know if I need to stop and answer a few questions. That's not a problem at all. All right, so oh, Cindy?
Sorry.
No, not at all. Do you have a question?
No, I was trying to get, no, I'm good.
Okay. All right. So I'm trying to see all of you and my screen. It's harder than what you would think. So these are kind of the general steps that I used with kids, and just whatever vocabulary came up is sort of what I reinforced. There are some general things that I wanted them to get the idea of what it is, surface tension, cohesion, things like that. But like I said, it was exploratory. So if they found something cool, or there was a certain sort of property that we could explore, we did that. So it really is something where you can kind of tailor it to sort of whatever you're trying to do. And so I actually took some videos of how these steps work, but I was having a real problem getting them to upload through our Wi-Fi here at the library. So I wasn't able to put them in my presentation, but I will share them at the end of the presentation and kind of talk about what they are. Basically, I have them do some basic observations. Observe water. What do you observe? They can, you could like run a straw through it, you could do whatever, but basically I have them put down a blob of water and then a drop of water beside it using these needle nose bottles. And if you may have done this sort of in science class or not, but the cohesion brings them together. And then I have them observe the two different drops of alcohol. And like I said, they just wipe their slate clean every time. The having alcohol or water on the surface previously does change how things might react a little bit, but not significant enough to change the lesson. And then we get to the really kind of cool part, which is adding alcohol to water. So they put a blob of water down on their sheet, and then they add alcohol, and it's hydrophobic. And so it does this really like cool jumping around thing. And then I sometimes will switch, and we'll have alcohol down, and I will spray some water on there. I don't recommend giving children spray bottles of alcohol or water. And in fact, I don't recommend giving them the ink at all until they absolutely need it, because it will be everywhere. It can get really messy, and kids aren't necessarily so great about being conservative because you don't really need a lot of the ink. And then adding alcohol ink to either water or alcohol or both. One of the things that's cool about that is that it really does change how you can see the ink separate and the pigment kind of come out. So that like falling out of solution, those kinds of things we can also, teach from that. And so before I was in makerspaces, I was a professor. So I didn't work with children. But so my process is like sort of like questiony, let's explore things. It tends to be more what you expect of a college classroom, but kids were really good at observing the different things, or noticing different observations, or seeing stuff on their piece of plastic and exploring what that could do. Because, at first it's just some clear liquid blobs on a piece of paper. It seems kind of like, okay, big deal. But they do get really excited about the hydrophobic stuff. Sometimes I'll have them come around and look at one person's specific project to see if they've done something unique, or there's a unique reaction that's happening. I don't always do the dotting alcohol ink, but it's another step you could do. You can dot the ink in and sort of explore what that does, where it's a little bit of alcohol ink as opposed to a lot. And then I show them 2 alcohol inks. At this point, you probably still don't need to give them the alcohol ink. If you had a helper, you could easily go around and just give a drop to everyone and then give another drop to everyone, because the droppers are really sensitive. It will just, they'll have a ton of ink if you're not really careful. That is probably one of my main teaching lessons, is like I mean, when I've done this with adults too, they really don't, it's hard to understand how much ink will go a long way. And especially during the last part where I have them make art, they'll just be like squeezing the ink out. And that's actually why often I will have them use those daubers, because then they're just doing a little ink at a time and daubing it on their page to make art. But they get to come away with an art piece. And when they're making the art, they get to use the concepts and the reactions that they've learned as we built up to the art. And like I said, I've done it. I do it on the Dura-Lar, but I have had some extra time once, and we also did it on mirror board, so they could see different reactions to different substrates. But it's not really a complicated activity to do, but I think it has the potential to be really fun, and you go away with something tangible, which is, depending on what kind of concepts you're teaching in a STEM class, not always the case. So like, it's always good when we can give them something to remember that lesson by. And I think that this does a good job with that. Potential adaptations, you could do it with different groups, you could do it more in depth, you could do a more formal experiment format where they're documenting, and again, with different materials. The considerations, like I said, don't give them the alcohol ink unless they really need it. Don't give the spray bottles to kids. I never had that go wrong. I knew that from the beginning, by the way. But one thing I also would do sometimes, depending on how the class was going, is if somebody, say they started their artwork and they didn't like it, one thing that I emphasized to them was that if you don't like it, the great thing about alcohol ink is you can spray it with alcohol and wipe it off, right? So sometimes a kid would like be disappointed about it, and I would just come over and I would spray some alcohol on their piece and they'd wipe it off. But you know, that's fun too, right? Because it's a little messy and they can kind of see what happens and that they can essentially wipe their slate clean. And in my experience, parents weren't actually as concerned about stains as I was. So they were actually like, oh, it's fine. Where I was really concerned that if anyone got anything on their clothing, that it would be a big deal, but it really never was. So I think, how are we doing on time? I think I'll go ahead and does anyone have any let's do questions first, and that way I can get to those if you have them. And then I can at the end show hopefully the little videos that I managed to take. So if people have questions, whether it's about alcohol ink or doing a STEM club or doing art with alcohol ink, I have experience with all of that. So I'm happy to answer questions that people have.
I do have a quick question. Have you ever tried Yupo or Yupo paper with this?
I have not, but you could totally do it with Yupo paper. Yeah.
Okay. So you think it would just respond similarly because
think
of the fact that it's not porous?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think so.
Okay.
I think I use the Dura-Lar just because it's a little more durable.
Okay.
But if you already have Yupo paper on hand, go for it. Yeah.
Okay.
Or if that seems to work better for you.
Yeah. Okay, thanks.
And you can always, like, this is it's a big sheet. So you could always cut things in half to make it last longer or make it work better. They don't need that big of an area to do this sort of thing. Do we have other questions? I will show you my big bag of inks that are kind of gone, but you can see that it gets messy.
Yeah, I was
this
going to
isn't
ask
just
what
for
brand you recommend.
So the brand that I think I've liked the best is Pinata. But I've used in here we have the Ranger alcohol inks, we have T-Rex inks, which I think were just something my boss found on Amazon. And there is another brand that I have in my personal stash. I can't remember, but it's a bottle that looks like this. Most of the bottles are gonna look like this. But it's Berea or something like that. This is the T-Rex, but the bottle is similar to that for those. Another thing with alcohol ink supplies, they do have metallics and like shimmery ones. I've never introduced those into this class, but you absolutely could. The metallics are really good for seeing stuff fall out of solution. I'm not a big fan of those just for that reason. And the shimmery ones just look cool. Like even if you're not adding alcohol or anything, when you drip the ink, you can just see it shimmering and moving around. And so you can kind of get the sense that it isn't merely a liquid, right? That it's a liquid with pigment in it. And so that's fun. Trying to think. This is our giant alcohol spray bottle that we just have a couple of them sitting around. So I just grab one and use it. Obviously be very careful about the direction you're spraying the alcohol in. And hence why you don't give it to children. But yeah, I wish I had some pictures of the specific projects, because it's also really, with alcohol ink, I always think it's really fun to see what people do with it and how they react to using it. So alcohol ink can be precise if you're used to using it. Like you can use very precise tools, but it is a ink that will kind of do what it wants. Like part of the beauty of it is that it's going to do some weird things that regular ink's not going to do. Even watercolor is not going to do. But some people are really struggle with that, and then some people are just, they're doing all sorts of things. So that's always fun to see what people do. Do we have other questions? I think I kind of went through it quickly, but it's not a particularly complicated thing. I can see if it will let me share my videos instead of my screen. So if maybe I'll just share the whole screen, and I don't want to share my sound. All right. And this is us here. All right. So let me put this out of the way. Okay. So let's see. Observing water. So it's just very basic. Showing what water does, and that it is attracted to itself. And then really comparing that to observing alcohol. So it really is just the 2 drops, and they can see how it spreads. They can see that it dries quickly, things like that. And then where's the alcohol on water? That's the fun sort of reactions that you can get. And you get that in different ways, depending on how much you're using, how you're doing it. So if you have a really big pool of water, you can put like alcohol in the middle and the water will still be attracted to itself, but sometimes there's not sort of an avenue for the alcohol to get out, and that can be a fun little reaction. Um, so also when we get to the ink, it's really clear that the water on dried ink isn't doing anything. That's kind of fun. And what do I have? Alcohol on ink. So if you have dried ink, it'll rehydrate, but it does often change the color. It changes the behavior. You could also see the concentration of the pigment at the end, the edges. And so that's a way to show also that falling out of solution and things like that. I wanna see. Oh, here's an example of ink and ink. So blue and green, and it just sort of melds together in the middle. You can do some cool stuff with that too. You could, I mean, you could really do most of this with alcohol ink if you wanted to. But alcohol ink is a little bit expensive, so that's sort of why I start with just the alcohol. What was this one? Oh yeah, that one. This was where I added alcohol to something that was already dry. And you can see that again, the pigment sort of goes to the edges. Oh, I took a picture of the ink caps to show you really how messy it gets. Cleaning those afterwards is just a whole deal, but you can clean them with alcohol. So obviously they didn't get cleaned well last time. I think that's all the videos that I had. Oh no, ink and water. So also the ink and water behaves in a really particular way that's fun to observe. I'll run that one more time. I don't know if you like being able to do slow motion videos, but I kind of love it. Some of them were good in slow-mo and some are not so great. So let's see. Back to the chat that I somehow missed. Alyssa, when you say samples, do you mean like samples of like the reactions or samples of like alcohol ink art? Oh, okay. Yeah. That's why I did the videos. I was like, really, without the videos, I mean, I could try to describe what happens, but that crazy thing that happens isn't really very descriptive. So I'm glad that did help. Again, I apologize that I didn't get it sort of more streamlined into the presentation. But I'm glad I was able to bring it up and people could see it. Any other questions that you have for me, or if you have any questions about library makers itself? Like I said, you'll receive an email and I will put together some materials kind of like that go along with this, and a link to the original place that I sort of got the idea that I developed this from. And you will also get a survey link. I forgot to bring that up. But if you would, it really helps us to get some feedback. So if you get that email, if you would please fill out the survey really quick, that would be much appreciated. Yeah, and you know, let me know if you develop something or you find something that's really cool, if you experiment with them. Did they take things home? So I let them take the art home. So we did the art last. So they kind of could build up to that. And I just let them, you can, like I said, you can either do a full piece of vellum or a half piece of vellum, or you could do other surfaces, Yupo paper, mirror board, that they can take home with them. That's kind of a simple thing. One thing about it though, is if they are using a lot of ink, it will, like, alcohol ink dries quickly, but not if you have poured it onto your page. So if they've used a lot of alcohol ink, I've actually used a fan in the past to try and get their items to dry before they leave. But again, if you can really get them to actually be conservative about the ink, then that won't be as much of a problem. Well, if we don't have any more questions, I really appreciate everyone who came. If you do have questions, my email is gonna go right into the chat. And feel free to contact me if you like. And if you come across anything cool, I would love to hear about it. So thank you for coming. And like I said, have a great day.